Hey everybody! Okay, so this video is about, I'll tell you why I'm laughing in a minute. This video is about the 1963-64 Montreal Canadiens, and just to take a look at their season, I'm going to be doing this part of my Habs history videos that I'm going to be doing all through the break, the suspension, which is going to be part of the break that we would have had in the summer. And I'm going to be doing various things, but this is a look at every year since the year I was born. So I was born in 1963, but at the end of the 63 season, 62-63 season, so I'm going to look at the next season. I was 8 months old when the 63-64 season started. I can't tell you too much about the season, like, little inside things, maybe a thing here or there. But as we go on and we get into the 70s, that's when things will change, and I'll be able to go a little more in depth into some of the things in playoff games and stuff like that that I remember from when I was growing up. So in 1963, oh, I should say, and that's from Talking Habs, the home of Habs hockey, where everything is dedicated to the Habs and all things hockey. And if you're a Habs fan and you want to see more videos like this, where I'm going to go over, different things from the past. I've been a Habs fan for 50 years. Going to go over series that stood out, games I remember, the whole seasons like I'm doing right now. So if you're interested in that, subscribe, ring the notifications bell. That is down there. While you're on the way to do that, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. And you can leave any comments you may have in the comment section about this video, about the season, the 63-64 season, or anything else in the comment section. So let's get right to it. So the Montreal Canadiens were coming off of 5 Stanley Cups in a row that ended in 1960. So this is 3 years removed from that, or 3 or 4. 60, then there's 60, 61, 62, 63. I guess this is the 4th season removed from it. So they're not a team that is winning cups at the moment, and it's Toronto. Chicago won in 61, and Toronto won 3 years in a row, and this is one of those years that they won. The GM was Frank Selke, longtime GM. Got them to those 5 cups, won a lot of cups with them. I believe his father was also the GM, or worked with the team, or got the team started, something like that. Coach is Toe Blake. Toe Blake, up to that time, winningest coach, I believe, or will be the winningest coach in the hockey history. That was surpassed by Scotty Bowman a number of years later. The captain is Jean Beliveau, who would be captain. I'm not sure when he was named captain, but I think it was like in the 1960 season. He would be captain. I believe he was for 10 years, and he would remain captain until 1970 when he retired. His alternates, which are the assistants or alternates, whatever you want to say, Boom Boom Geoffrion. Boom Boom Geoffrion got his name from the sound that the puck made when he took a slap shot, and I do believe Boom Boom Geoffrion is the inventor, I guess you'd say, of the slap shot. So I do believe that's true. I did not look that up, but that's one of those things, that it's in your head, and I'm 99.9% sure that's true. And the other one was Henri the Pocket Rocket Richard, who recently just passed away from Alzheimer's. As a matter of fact, his funeral is being held. I imagine it's already been held today. Unfortunately, in private because of all this COVID flu stuff. So it's just with the family. And yeah, a great hockey player, 20 years as a Hab, just a great hockey player. They won the Prince of Wales Trophy, which I guess is what the President's Trophy used to be called. So they were first in the league. They had a record of 36, 21, and 13. They were 22, 7, and 6 at home, and 14, 14, and 7, which is an even 500 on the road. So they were very dominant at home, which a team should be, especially if you're going to finish. You want to finish first and win a cup. And they were at 500 at least. You got to be 500 on the road or better, and they managed that. And remember all those, so 36, 21, and 13, which means 13 ties, not overtime losses or shootout losses. Got to remember that. That came a long time later. Goals for, 209 goals for, and goals against 167. And remember, they played 70 games in those days. So 12 games less than they played today. And they scored 209, where Montreal, I believe, was right there in the 69th game of this season. So you can look at it and say, pretty much scoring this season for Montreal was about the same as in 63-64. Team leaders, goals, Jean Beliveau, 28 goals. Assists, Jean Beliveau, 50 assists, so points. Jean Beliveau, 78 points. Great hockey player, Jean Beliveau. Penalty minutes, Terry Harper, who I believe was a defenseman, 149 penalty minutes to lead the team. The wins for the goalie, Charlie Hodge, 33 wins. So obviously, in those days, your number one goalie played pretty much all of the games. Goals against average for Hodge was 226. They did not have save percentages in those days that they kept track of. So you only get the goals against average, and save percentages come, I think, near the end of the 70s. I think, or at least in the 70s, I think that's when they started to use that stat. Now, for the results of the league for the season, so like I said, Montreal was 36, 21, and 13. Chicago came in second in the league, 36, 22, and 12, which was an odd thing for Chicago because usually, and now this is, I know, in the 50s, Chicago and the Rangers were usually the basement, were always in the basement. And then Boston was just ahead of that. And then you had Montreal, Toronto, Detroit that were the good teams in general through the 50s and 60s from my recollection. So Chicago in second, Toronto was in third, 33, 25, and 12. Detroit fourth, 30, 29, and 11. The Rangers, pitiful 22, 38, and 10. And Boston, an even worse, 18, 40, and 12. And it gives me a lot of pleasure to read those kind of numbers for Boston. So this is my second take on this. At this point, when I want to change the board, what I did was I just finished the video, and so I had to shoot it over again because there's more to come when I change the board. Hang on a second. All right, so let's look at the record versus the opponent. So it was still a 6-team league, and this is their record against the other 5 teams. So versus Boston, they were 7, 2, and 5. Chicago 5, 7, and 2. Detroit 7, 5, and 2. The Rangers, they were a whopping 10, 3, and 1. And against Toronto, they had a winning record, 7, 5, and 2. Didn't seem to help them in the playoffs. Unfortunately, they shut out the opponent 7 times that season. They were shut out 6 times that season. And there were also, on top of those, there were 2 scoreless ties. Something you don't see today. So you young people, you don't know what that means to see a scoreless tie until the end, and then it will go to overtime. And a shootout, for all of us old people, we remember the ties. There were some teams really, you can see some teams have 20-odd ties. I think one year Philadelphia had I want to say a 35-game streak where they didn't lose. And in that, they had something like 12 or 15 ties, but they didn't lose for 35 games. I don't remember what season that was. So now these are the players on the team, and what they got. So Beliveau was a center. He had 20. We went over that 28.50 for 78, and that was in 68 games. Bobby Russo. So for all of his old guys, these names actually mean something because for me a little early, but I do remember the names. I don't remember Bobby Russo a lot, but I do remember him. And it just, nostalgic and just kind of cool. And all you young guys, well, just a look into the players and what kind of points they got back in the day. So Bobby Russo was a right wing. He had 25 goals, 31 assists, 56 points. Not too bad. 70. That was in 70 games. Henri Richard, a center, had 14 goals, 39 assists, 53 points in 66 games. Sorry, a little bit of it got smudged. I'm not redoing it. John Ferguson, good old Fergie, tough as nails, but could play. He was a left wing, 18 goals, 27 assists for 45 points. Imagine 45 points for a guy that at the time was probably the most feared fighter in the league, I think. And that was in 59 games. So figure that, 49 points in 59 games from your tough guy. Pretty good hockey player, John Ferguson, got to tell you. Dave Balin, I guess. I don't remember him that much. I know the name. I remembered the name. I don't remember him that much as a player. He was a left wing, had 24 goals and 18 assists for 42 points in 70 games, so not too bad. Boom, boom. All right. Boom, boom. Jeffrey on 21 goals, 18 assists, 39 points in 55 games. I remember that was a season he had a bunch of injuries, or he had an injury that kept him out for a while. Gilles Tremblay, a left wing, 22 goals, 15 assists, 37 points in 61 games. Claude Provost, I remember him. I guess he was like the third line winger. He was a third line winger, 15 goals, 17 assists, 32 points in 68 games. Jacques Laperriere, when I get a headache, it's a bad one. Now that's not, I'm not being racist. That's from a commercial. I'll never forget. It's for Instantine. When I get a headache, it's a bad one. I take Instantine. They used to play that commercial so often. But Jacques Laperriere, great hockey player, big tall guy, kind of lanky, but a great defenseman. 2 goals, 28 assists, 30 points, 65 games. Ralph Backstrom was a center. I would imagine he was the center on the third line, the checking line. In those days, third line was the checking line. Fourth line, I guess, was what you'd call more of an energy line. But the third line was the checking line. They could put a little offense out there, but they usually tackled the top line on the other team. Backstrom had 8 goals, 21 assists, 29 points in 70 games. J.C. Tremblay, I believe number 3, because I remember that guy. I remember that guy, J.C. Tremblay, great defenseman, 5 goals, 16 assists, 21 points in 70 games. Billy Hick, I don't really remember him a lot, but right wing, 11 goals, 9 assists, 20 points, probably the fourth line winger, I would think, in 48 games. Although 20 points in 48 games, not too bad. Terry Harper, with defenseman, 2 goals, 15 assists, 17 points in 70 games. I guess he was more of a defensive defenseman. Like, I remember the name a lot, the hockey card. I don't remember him as a player that much. Red Berenson played here. Center, probably, he was probably old then, probably on the fourth line, I would think, with the points totals he's got. 7 goals, 9 assists, 16 points in 69 games. So he played pretty much the full season, right? Only missed 1 game. Great hockey player, kind of legendary. I mean, he just a long-time player. Red Berenson, yeah, just a good hockey player. I didn't know he played here. So as much as I do know about the Canadiens, I didn't know Red Berenson played here. Weird. Jean-Guy Talbot, defenseman. I would think a stay-at-home defenseman with his numbers. 1 goal, 13 assists, 14 points in 66 games. And in nets, Charlie Hodge was obviously the starting goalie. 33 wins, 18 losses, 11 ties. 226 goals against with 8 shutouts. Really good shutout total, which does mean he got all the shutouts plus the one of the scoreless ties. And then Gump Worsley was there. I don't know why Gump only played. I believe he's got a record here like 7 games. He was probably in another one because it had said he was in 8 games. He went 3-2-2, 297 goals against, 1 shutout, so he got the other scoreless tie. And so they made it to the playoffs. They were obviously first overall. They lost it in what was the first round in those days, the semifinals. They only had 2 rounds because there was only 6 teams in the league. Against Toronto, unfortunately, in 7 games. In the first game, they were at home, lost 2-0. Second game, again at home, they won 2-0, excuse me, in the first game. Second game, they lost 2-1. Third game, they were in Toronto, where they won 3-2. And in the fourth game, they lost 5-3 in Toronto. And I believe this one that I'm watching right now, I think I'm watching the 4th game. I'm either watching the 4th or 6th. To prepare for the video, I went on YouTube and watching from that series, from this series here. The Leafs are up 3-0 at this point. So it has to be either game 6 or game 4. I mean, game 5 they were at home, lost. They won 4-2. Game 6 in Toronto, lost 3-0. And the deciding game in Montreal, they lost 3-1, which is unfortunate. So they lost to the Toronto. Toronto won 4-3. That's how that Year ended with a loss. In those days, when the Habs did not win the Stanley Cup, it didn't matter about playoffs or anything like that. All that mattered was they win the Stanley Cup or not. So it was a losing season according to fans. We kind of had that attitude all the way through the 70s, right up into the 80s, that if Montreal didn't win a Stanley Cup, it was not a successful season. So there you go. That's a look at the 1963-64 season. My first attempt at this. I'm sure it'll get better as it goes along. Well, I'll know more about what happened during the season. I can pick out individual games and maybe talk about them and stuff like that, and to give you more about what happened in the playoff games than I can right now up until we get into the 70s. So thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. If you like the video, give a thumbs up. Subscribe, ring the notifications bell if you're a Habs fan and want to see more videos like this on a daily basis. I recently took a few days off after the announcement of the suspension, but I'll be back to doing daily videos, one of these every day. And yeah, we'll go from there, and hopefully we'll be back before the 8 weeks that it's looking like we're going to be out. But that's for down the road. Thanks for watching. I took too long to do this. Peace out, everybody. See you next video.